Welcome to Here She Stands, the podcast where Lutheran women from across Australia come together as a community to encourage one another in the gospel. At Here She Stands, we invite Lutheran men and women from Australia and around the world who've been strengthened by the abundant riches of God's grace to share their gifts to guide, help, and encourage Lutheran women in Australia. As we learn from their stories, theological insights, and creative gifts, we pray that the lives of Lutheran women will be enriched as they continue the conversation and consolation with each other, growing in faith in God and in love for those they serve. We do this so that when the trials of this world push us down, we can hold fast to the Word of God and confidently say, "Here I stand, I can do no other."
Welcome to another episode of Here She Stands. My name is Lexi, and today I am joined by my co-host, Sonia. In today's episode, Meg Pearce is back again. If you have been listening to our podcast for a while, she joined us in Season 1 to talk about caring for the dying, and again in Season 2 to talk about natural family planning. So welcome back again, Meg.
Thank you for having me. I'm a bit shy about it, but you keep asking me, so I have to say yes.
Well, yeah, we had a listener actually request to have you back on again.
Oh.
So that must make you feel a bit special.
I'm very touched, thank you.
So today's topic, from what I can understand, is one of your favorite things to talk about.
Absolutely. I am. I have to say, when you suggested maybe I come back on the podcast, hospitality came to mind as a topic I'd love to even just hear one of your podcasts about. So yes, when you sort of turned it back on me, I was kind of like, well, how can I say no? Yes. So hospitality, feel really excited to talk about this today.
Okay, lovely. So in a nutshell, how would you define hospitality?
I don't know if I can adequately define it, but there's some things I think about when I think about hospitality. I guess because we as Christians have received the ultimate gift of life and love, and we are so loved, and we want to share this love. And in a small way, we want to mirror the one who is love in our daily lives. And so I guess hospitality involves our homes, our conversations, our welcoming smile, the way we acknowledge children, and even acknowledging those we don't perhaps particularly like in our daily lives, doing these acts as a small mirror to Jesus. And I guess I think particularly of hospitality today in terms of a meal or welcoming people into our homes, and then, mirroring that one great meal that is Christ's body and blood in the meal, and how he shows his love to us in that. So I guess hospitality involves settings. So in my mind, things that come to mind are church, our homes, social settings, wherever we gather with people, any space. And I think when I think about spaces, I think perhaps there's a group of people who are more comfortable in that space and other people who are newcomers. And I think the obligation on us as Christians is to help people who are newcomers into a space feel welcome, soften that, I guess, that newness, that feeling of being awkward or new in a situation. And so we open our hearts and our homes and our spaces to be welcoming. Part of what I like about hospitality is, as well, is you can meet people down the street and chat with them, and they can meet you or at work or whatever. But there's something that we really reveal about ourselves when people come into our home and they see our homes, and it reflects our unique personality as someone unique, uniquely made. You're a unique person, and our homes reflect that. And it's a generous act by bringing people we know or don't know into our home, I think.
That's so true. What are some notable experiences that you've had with hospitality, both in receiving and giving it?
Well, I feel like I have been blessed, like crazy blessed, with the ways that people have shown me and my husband, or particularly me, hospitality. And I guess it's reflecting on these incredible acts of kindness that people have shown me and the way I've been transformed and changed by those, that means that I feel very enthusiastic about this topic, I guess. Firstly, I'll just say my family of origin, my childhood, I don't think my family was particularly focused on hospitality, like formal acts of hospitality. We didn't have big dinner parties or parties. We did host a few Christmas get-togethers for family. Like there was a bit of a New Year's tradition in the wider Klein family that I was, I guess, adopted into. Long story there. But anyway, yes. So beyond that, my family weren't particularly, what would you say, concerned or active in practicing hospitality. My husband's family was very much dedicated to practicing hospitality. And so I got to see that firsthand when I moved to Sydney, because my husband Fraser and his parents, but particularly his mother June, had a real tradition of preparing food and inviting people home after church. And then I feel like I've had this front row seat in my life to some families and individuals who took this calling to practice hospitality very seriously. And it's been really an amazing education. I'd love to say that I've reached I'd love to wish that I could reach their excellent example of being hospitable. I don't think I have. And to my shame, I feel a bit ashamed to be talking about hospitality when I haven't reached my own standards, I guess. But anyway, I'm still happy to talk about what I've received and observed and how I've just been so nurtured and shown love through other people's kind acts of hospitality. Now, I have to talk about this family, the Lindners. I probably won't name other people, but this Lindner family in some ways I think were legends in the New South Wales Lutheran Church. Arthur and Helen decided to buy a big house for the reason so that they could show hospitality to people and have boarders. I was their 19th boarder. So I auditioned for a school in Sydney, a music high school. It's a public school. I got in and I lived with my godmother for a little while, and unfortunately that kind of came to an end. And this family, the Lindners, were on some cruise on the harbour next to another Lutheran family from my region, and they heard about my plight. And overnight, they had offered me a place to stay in their home. So not only did they give me a home for 5 years and look after me like their own family, they also used to practice hospitality to anyone who needed company. So if there were people who were in the congregation who were single or widowed or lonely or travellers, coming or going, or, someone who needed somewhere to stay, they had their ears open for those clues and they would offer them a room or a meal or whatever. And so Helen would often prepare a meal before church, and my husband's mother was like this too. And if somebody walked through the door at church that Sunday, they were invited home. And so for me to watch on for these sorts of things was just a most amazing education in Christian hospitality. It was just beautiful. So then I have to mention that once Fraser had been ordained, we moved to Melbourne for his first congregation. And so this was our first congregation, was a time of living away from family. And in a similar way, there were families in Melbourne, 2 particular families I think of, maybe actually definitely more, who sort of took us into their families, who took us into their hearts and showed great hospitality to us through that time in Melbourne, and took it to, just amazing levels. So, for example, our second child, we held her baptism party at the home of this one of the families. I think when I turned 30 and when my husband turned 40, they helped us host parties. I know that one family hosted weddings because they had a beautiful home. People would have their wedding reception at their house, all sorts of things. And when you're away from your family, people would invite us into their homes for things like Easter or Christmas and include us because we're away from family. I also think about my father-in-law, Kevin, who's now deceased, but he modeled to me a great gift of showing hospitality through asking people questions and inviting information about them. And I loved that about him and how he modeled that to me. Yeah, so there's just been a great richness in my past of receiving hospitality, being welcomed, being treated like I'm part of the family and I'm loved and cared for and nourished with food and given a bed. I mean, my mind boggles at the kindness people have shown me and then my family as well. Amazing.
Wow. Before we go on with the next question,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, have you read the book by Rosaria Butterfield, The Gospel Comes with a House Key?
No, I haven't, but I've listened to her give talks. And, just this afternoon, I started thinking about her because I think about how our lives are transformed through hospitality. And I think about how she was utterly transformed. So just to give you some background, so I don't know where you're heading with your question, but with my answer and thinking about Rosaria, she was a feminist academic living a life of same-sex relationships, derided Christianity and lauded, I guess, the academic ideals of, I don't know, like postmodern freedom and whatnot. But she was welcomed into the space of a pastor's home, a pastor and his wife, and shone the gospel in its truth through conversation, but was welcomed with great generosity and kindness into their home over and over and over again. And it was their kind hospitality in my mind that had a big effect on her. I mean, and creating the space where she could ask lots of questions. Now, is that where you were heading with that question?
Yes, basically, I was just going to say that I've read the book. I've read her book, The Gospel Comes with the House Key, and it is one of my favorite books. And just some of the things that you've been saying, she talks about in the book as well. And just the power of hospitality. And one thing that really helped me is she taught me the difference between hospitality and entertaining.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I think I've been learning that lesson over the years as well. Because I think
Yes.
about how now that I'm 50, I am so much less anxious. Whereas back in my 20s, I was pretty anxious. And I should say as well that when I started talking about family of origin, some of the things I was thinking about that were also that when, we left our families and made a new family as husband and wife, because we've received so much hospitality, we knew that we had a calling to hospitality. And we've always wanted to exercise this, but this does not mean that it has not been without anxiety for me. And over the years, I've been able to learn to shed that because I've worked out the real meaning, the real grace and the gifts that flow and that we all need to receive. And I guess, I could just shed those expectations on myself and the worries. And so I've been transformed by dedicating myself to the discipline of showing hospitality.
Yes.
So it's just, beautiful.
Yeah, I love the way that Rosaria puts it in that hospitality is simply just opening up your life to someone else. You don't have to change your life. You don't have to change the way you make your meals, or you don't have to, make the house perfectly wonderful and decorated. It's just welcoming them into your everyday life and into your routine. And it brought me so much relief.
Oh, absolutely.
Just understanding that difference. And so I guess that leads on really well to the next question, which is there seems to be this idea that our homes do need to be perfectly clean and our children need to be spotless and our recipes need to be new and fresh and exciting in order to practice good hospitality. Can you speak into this a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, oh golly, I've had this inner monologue going in my head sometimes that I must have like the worst kept house. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I am the worst homemaker, housekeeper in the world, and you just got to deal with some of those thoughts that you have. But I am by no means the measure of tidiness, cleanliness, orderliness. Oh my goodness, anyway, I'm not going to focus on those things. But Yes, there is this idea that your home needs to be perfect, that people might not be able to handle a little bit of mess or clutter or whatever, that people will judge us. But, the more that we can grow in knowing that God is our judge, that we're called to show hospitality. And when you think about the model being even a cup of water, you know that you can start small. Then I think about things like, what are some barriers we might have? Well, we might say, well, I'm very poor. Well, maybe don't focus on people coming to your home. Go out with somebody and do something that's free. Walking in the Botanic Gardens is free. Hey, would you like to come with me for a walk in the gardens? That's hospitality, surely. Creating a space for a conversation and for, as you say, revealing a bit more of yourself or finding out about someone else. Then I think, well, some of us are not that skilled. And then I think, well, why not just buy some takeaway? Why not use your resources and your lovely table setting to buy some excellent food from someone who does have skill? And I also think about how I've received some hospitality that was utterly basic. I still remember one of the first mature friendships I had. She was in upper high school in Sydney. I was just there in, year 8, year 9. And she invited me over to her house, Vic, and she had Granny Smith apples and Earl Grey tea. And it was so exotic. I don't know. Look, she also taught me to cook a basic omelette, and that omelette got me through some really unskilled early years. And I've cooked that omelette for people and shown my kids, this is a basic yummy thing that you can cook for people. And I think, if you can learn something simple, or even, learn a really simple, nourishing meal, what is the problem with repeating that? Over and over for different people. And sometimes I think, I know we've had these people over before. I bet I'm cooking the same meal for them. It doesn't matter. And then I think, well, what if you have some money, resources, but you don't have confidence? And I think, well, why don't you support social gatherings that go on in your church? You can volunteer to help at church and you can gain some skills there, or in charities, or you can go to a cafe and pay some coffees forward for people in need. I have a feeling there's a bit more of a tradition or a culture of taking people out for dinner in the US, so people might show hospitality by taking them to a restaurant and paying for the meals for everyone. Or maybe you don't have a home, or you're in a share house situation and you just have a bedroom and you don't have a space. So I think, take someone out for cake and coffee at a cafe, or go and have a picnic. All sorts of, ways that we can show hospitality that kind of, we don't have to look at our limitations as something that will stop us from showing hospitality.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you find in the Bible about hospitality?
Well, I guess, as I said before, the ultimate example is of Jesus, his own body for us that he gives to us, but he's also a home for us. So we are called to partake of the body of Christ, but we are also in the body of Christ, in the family. And I guess this is the model, this is the inspiration, this is why we show hospitality, and we are mirroring the meal and the unity and friendship that we have through Jesus and his love and his sacrifice. And when I have just absolutely loved daydreaming about hospitality since we discussed this a while ago, Lexi. And I guess in some ways I've focused on meals and gatherings, but you could do a whole podcast on travelers and refuge and staying with people. And that's kind of come into my mind a bit more in the last few days. And I kind of sad that I haven't explored that a bit more, but we don't want to be here all day. But yes, so I think about celebrations. Jesus' first miracle was at a wedding. Celebrations. I love a good party. I've thrown a whole lot of parties and I've been to parties and I enjoy them no end. So celebrations, wonderful. Then in the Bible, we see a focus on the sick, the poor, the widow, the child, the stranger. Not just our favorite people, we are called to invite. Sure, we're called to invite our friends and to build the faith community and look after each other in the church, but we are also repeatedly called on to show hospitality to everyone. And so these are the hard truths for us to chew on and to, I guess, to examine ourselves and to confess our sins, and we're called to follow that. And yeah, this is good for me because I would like to follow Christ. And this means that, we don't just show deference to the people in high places, but we also, we're called to show hospitality to everyone. Now, we don't want to put ourselves in danger. So sometimes we can exercise this better, I guess, at church and in public places. You don't want to be endangering your family because that's your first calling, of course, is to your husband or your wife and to your children. But yes, we called to show hospitality to everyone. Also in the Bible, I think it's a setting for, we see drama. So I think of the Last Supper. We see intimacy. I think of John reclining against Jesus. And I love this idea of transformation through hospitality. Zacchaeus came to mind because I've been thinking about hospitality, and then Zacchaeus was in the readings recently. And Jesus asks him to have him over that night. And this event transforms Zacchaeus. It changes his life, having Jesus in his presence. And then I think of Matthew. Jesus sees Matthew sitting at the tax booth and he calls him to follow him. And the next thing, Jesus is reclining at his table in his house. And behold, many sinners and tax collectors, would have been changed by Jesus and his disciples. Then I think about the Bible where Jesus teaches and demonstrates and models. And we've also just had the reading of the woman living a sinful life, and she brings the alabaster jar. She weeps and she wipes her hair over his feet with perfume. And Jesus reprimands the host, a Pharisee. You didn't give me water for my feet. You didn't give me a kiss of welcome. No oil. I guess in this, Jesus is teaching us when we are thinking of Jesus as we welcome people into our home, we should give them a kiss or an embrace of welcome. Obviously, I'm no theologian. I don't know how it works in terms of, we don't have dusty feet from walking the journey to their homes, but it does show that we need to show care for people and welcome them in very particular ways and honor them when they come into our home.
Yes.
And then I think of the Bible showing us Mary and Martha. They welcome Jesus into their home, and Jesus encourages us. Oh, look, there's so many lessons, and every single time I hear a sermon on this, I hear something new. But I guess I think about that attentive listening that we need to pay when we welcome guests into our home. When we welcome Jesus through those guests into our home, we need to listen to what they're saying. So, yeah, there's some of the things that come to mind when I think about, I guess, themes and demonstrations, things that we can learn from the Bible. And I've also prepared some texts for us to look at. So, yeah, I guess here are some. Jesus as the model and the reason. Matthew 10:40. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. I love the way this, just a cup of water. It sort of shows how essential it is. We can't live without water. The way we are called to look after others. It really is humbling.
Yeah. And that verse, when we show hospitality to others, we are essentially showing hospitality to Christ.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, it's very sobering, and we need to keep hearing it. I think there's lots of Bible content about strangers. Matthew 25:35, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. And, that was me in Sydney. I was a stranger and this family invited me in. For 5 years, they gave me a bedroom, somewhere to live. They took me to church every Sunday. It just blows my mind. Wow. Romans 12:13, contribute to the needs of the saints, extend hospitality to strangers. And again, Hebrews 13:2, let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. And this text actually goes on for quite a bit. But don't you just love that opening up into the wider realm that, could have been entertaining angels? So yes, so we've got that reflection on welcoming Jesus, showing kindness as if to Jesus when we show kindness to each other, but also the angels. So beautiful. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got these tough callings on our lives because of our natural inclinations. In Luke 14:12-14, we hear, then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So there is an absolute clear mandate in the Bible that we need to look after our families. And absolutely, we're going to be showing hospitality to our families. But as mentioned earlier, we're called beyond just our families to all sorts of other people.
In that verse, it's really showing that hospitality is a means of God's grace. It's how he looks after the poor and the sick and the lame and all of those people listed in that verse. He uses our hospitality to care for others.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And this is why I think about, because you can also listen to that and listen to those verses and hear yourself in it, and how we go as sinners and as sick sinners with empty hands to the communion rail and receive the meal from Jesus, the host. We are the lame and the crippled and the poor, and we go to him, but we keep receiving so that we can also give. And as I say, mirror in our homes how he shows us hospitality when we go to worship, I think. And so I think as Christians as well, we're called to look after the community of believers. And so we hear this in the next few that I have as well. So 1 Timothy 5:9, let a widow be put on the list if she is not less than 60 years old and has been married only once. She must be well attested for her good works as one who has brought up children, shown hospitality, washed the saints' feet, helped the afflicted, and devoted herself to doing good in every way. I mean, it's a really interesting one, but I think it shows that expectation of Christians that they will just do this. This is just part of what we do as Christians. 1 Peter 4:9, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be serious and discipline yourselves for the sake of your prayers. Above all, maintain constant love for one another, for love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaining. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received. And I love that ending because, as I said earlier, it may not be that we have a fancy house or great cooking skills, but there are lots of ways we can show hospitality. And I've got some ideas to kind of think outside of the circle as well that we can talk about soon. 3 John 1, we ought therefore to show hospitality to such people so that we may work together for truth. So that's a good encouragement for us to build each other up towards truth and goodness over our tables and in our homes. And lastly, I have this 1 Timothy 3, and this one's directed at, I guess, church leaders, church teachers and pastors. Now, the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach. So some great qualities put together there, and not missing is hospitality.
Yes, I guess I had never thought of it that way before, or that word had never really stood out to me, that pastoral families are to show hospitality. It's kind of like one of the requirements that comes with being a pastoral family.
Yeah, I think it's a non-negotiable. Yeah, it's part of the life of a minister's family, and it's a delight. It's an absolute excellent part of our life. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, hospitality can look different for different people, because a pastor's wife with a newborn and 3 other little children, her hospitality is going to look different to, a pastoral family whose children have grown up and left home.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've even noticed in the different phases of my life that we've shown hospitality differently. So we're in a phase of life where we are near quite a lot of family. So a lot of birthdays and celebrations are focused on family. In previous years, we have not had family near us, and so we have had a different approach to opening our home. And anyway, it's been kind of interesting. So that is the last of my verses, and I actually just was thinking there are so many. We honestly could go for hours and hours, and I'm realizing this is probably already longer than your normal podcast. So
you've already mentioned so many great ways that we can show hospitality. Do you have any more tips for us?
I do. I've been reflecting on a few different ways and ideas to be creative and, to think around this. In some ways, it doesn't hurt to maybe lower your standards. Sometimes you might have set the bar a bit too high. Or in my case, I think about sometimes how anxious I was as a hostess. And I think it did have to do with my maybe impossibly high standards for myself, but also my lack of trust in other people to receive our hospitality graciously or something. So I would encourage you to just persist and to keep learning through every situation so that look, many things in life are painful. Childbirth is painful, and God willing, we will receive a living, breathing blessing at the end of childbirth. Sometimes I use that as a bit of I love patterns and mirrors, things that I love metaphors. You've met me before. I love a parallel and allegory. Sometimes things in life are hard and they can breed good things. So, like maybe it feels like hospitality is a bit of a challenge that would be hard, but, persevere, give it a go. Maybe the first few times might be difficult. And I guess when I'm saying this, I might mean maybe hosting a meal or something in your home, or maybe approaching someone and asking them, seeing if they'd like to share some time with you in some informal way. But practice does make things easier. Okay, another thought I have is little children. And I think about a couple of times when I was little and I either felt like people didn't see me or they didn't like me or I don't know. And so with that in mind, and because I love children and because I know that they are a gift from God and because there are some really strong biblical motivation there to look after the little ones, I think the way we welcome children is really important. So even little things like knowing their names, and I'm possibly quite poor at that myself, moving down into their space so that you can be eye to eye, acknowledging them, saying hello, and let them know that they are welcome in whatever space you're in. And now that I don't have little children, and I really hope to have grandchildren one day, I certainly prioritize keeping in my home. I keep toys, pencils and games, all sorts of things that might be nice entertainment for little people when they come through my door. Some other things that I think are important in hospitality are modeling good use of language and speech and conversation that builds up, not using gossip or slander, not swearing, and not holding arguments. I've actually been in a couple of social settings where people have held arguments in front of us, and we were intensely uncomfortable in those settings. Very uncomfortable and very memorable. But at the opposite end, we can model not gossiping, not speaking ill of other people. And I think that's a great thing to do in your hospitality. I think as Christians, we can be like detectives, looking out for prompts and hints and opportunities. So, for example, something comes to mind. So-and-so's wife is going overseas on a trip for a few weeks, and you know that they are prone to loneliness or they find cooking really difficult, and you might invite them over for a meal. while their wife is away or something like that. Or you've heard that somebody is an international student and they've come to a university near you and they don't have many friends yet. I mean, invite them for a meal. They're probably really lonely and really homesick. Just these sorts of things. Oh, okay, that person is not connected here. They don't have family to welcome them into their home. And it's these people that our family tries to make a practice of thinking of those people at Easter, at Christmas, during festivals, when they don't have family nearby. Their family might be overseas. They might be widowed. All sorts of reasons. Another one for us that's more recent, which is it's bittersweet. Our daughter has moved out, and so we now have a spare bedroom. So while I'm very sad not to have Francesca in our home anymore, she is only 10 minutes down the road. But yeah, we have a spare room. And so, if we hear that somebody needs a place to stay, or you're just listening in conversation, it's an opportunity to offer a spare room. And yeah, we really love to have that opportunity and to offer that to people. And then something that our family does is have a regular date or a regular aim for hospitality. And for us, it's Monday nights. We open our home to Fraser's mum. It used to be my mum as well before she died. And Monday nights, they are always welcome for dinner. We always invite them. And our daughter Francesca generally comes home if she's not working. And we try to be on a lookout for who might also benefit from a family meal and coming along as well. So yeah, there's some of the thoughts that I had, some ideas. I mean, I'm never going to say polish your brass up on a Wednesday night ready for, it's nothing like that, but
I really love what you said about talking to children by their names. I think that in general, remembering people's names and calling them by their name, I think there's few things that make people feel as loved and honored and remembered as just remembering their names. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And I was reflecting on this today and I was thinking how deeply important it is to us. And, they've done all sorts of studies that, in a party setting, someone says your name across the room, you absolutely hear it. You are wired to hear your name. And when people acknowledge us with our names, and that's adult or child alike, it is so important to us. So my husband is really good at this. He's great at learning people's names, and it means a lot to people.
I was actually going to mention your husband because he often uses people's names at communion, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Just that alone is something that I remember all the time. Like when... I don't know, it's just one of those memories that sticks out going, I received communion and the pastor remembered my name.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that really stuck out to me as feeling loved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these are not small things.
No.
The way that we make Christ our model and the way that we make our Christian faith the model for how we act in everyday life is no small thing. It made me reflect today on how Jesus welcomes us into his family in baptism. Our name is spoken with water and the word, the triune God, and we are welcomed into a new family. And we do small things to mirror that big truth. We say people's name and acknowledge them. And it's deep. It's really deep stuff. I love it. Yes. Goodness me. I could talk forever. I also had a little bit of a section in my little document that I prepared before this chat about surprising situations to show hospitality. Okay, so here's a crazy one. My mum was a smoker, and all our lives we were horrified by her smoking. It broke our hearts. And we knew that it would possibly take her life. I mean, my mum was very fortunate to live to a good old age. And when I said earlier that my parents didn't sort of practice hospitality, they didn't throw big dinner parties or whatever on a regular occasion, but my mum always sat down for a cigarette And often people who came up to our house, back in the day, people used to just drop in on each other in the country and turn up for a chat. And my mum would always sit down, get the instant coffee and sit there and have a smoke. And sometimes other people smoked. But, I just loved it. I loved seeing my mum relax and chat and take some time out and welcome people into her space. And isn't that odd? But it was beautiful. Involved smoking, but it was beautiful. Yeah.
So I was just going to say that's really funny because I've had a similar experience in that it was a Lutheran minister. I won't name who it is because I haven't got his permission to do it on a podcast, but he taught me how to smoke a cigar, and we were standing out on his deck in the rain and he was teaching me how to smoke a cigar, and he just started asking me things like, how do you feel about, one day being a pastor's wife? What are your fears? And, all that type of stuff. And looking back, that was actually really special.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't smoke another cigar. I didn't even get through a whole one. I could only take over 3 or 4 puffs and I was done. But it was just his hospitality over a cigar. It was just lovely.
Crazy, huh? I know.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of really interesting ways that we can be hospitable. And who would have thought smoking was one of them? But, it clearly is. Now, I have this other one that is kind of surprising, and it makes me think of the people who might go, well, I don't have resources. But I think this is a really good way of showing hospitality. And I think of things like, let's say you've got a staff room at work, or I don't know, some sort of social space, and there's a group of people having a conversation. And you know how you just really feel on the outer in those situations at a party or something like that? As we can see that person over there who's not in the conversation and make an entry point for them. Offer hospitality by breaking out of the conversation and inviting them in. Oh, hey, Marguerite over there. Oh, you used to something or other. Join your conversation to that person. Welcome them in. Make introductions. Yeah, I love that sort of stuff. And it's so basic. It's like the cup of water. It's essential and it's beautiful. And let me see. Oh, do you know the other thing? And, feel free to finish right here. The other thing, yesterday I needed this really bulky item that we have laundered. And so I took it to this specialist dry cleany type place. And there's clearly this husband and wife team that work there. I've been there twice now. I want to find other things to get washed because the way they welcome you, oh my goodness, they drop everything. They walk towards you and smile, these huge smiles. And honestly, it is so beautiful. And I want to pay like $35. Are you sure? I don't know. It's just so beautiful. And it makes me think of Mother Teresa, and I knew she had a quote about smiling, and I looked up on the internet. I found this website page, and there are actually 8 quotes where she speaks about smiling, and one of them is, "Let us always meet each other with a smile, for the smile is the beginning of love." And it's just such a small and simple act. We can just welcome each other with a smile or use their name. It's so tiny, but it is so beautiful, and it really is the beginning of love. Yes.
Yes. Now, I know that we've been going on for some time now.
Yes.
And this is a question that I haven't typed down for you, but it's something that has kind of been brewing in the back of my mind. What about showing hospitality to the difficult people?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that everyone has had guests come over and it has been difficult. Either they've been demanding, or there has been rudeness, or they're just, there could be a number of things. Do you have any thoughts on, or even drawing from your own experiences about showing God's hospitality to the difficult ones?
Well, clearly we're called to do that. So we need to do that. Possibly having some boundaries. So I've known quite a few people to go, well, I'm working tomorrow. I really need to get up early. So we have loved having you over this evening, but we need to head off to bed now. So sometimes, having a limit to the time frame or whatever, that is one idea. I've actually seen my husband model this, and I hope I'm not, showing him up or something. One thing that he does that I think is really helpful is a bit of, how you're parenting a toddler and you can see they're heading towards a bit of rough behavior, and you either use distraction or aversion or something. And I think my husband's really good at using humor and changing the subject. And so when I say, it's not good to gossip, we're not going to model bad behavior. We as Christians are called not to gossip and slander. So if you ever see things erring in that direction, just don't join in, change the subject. We don't want to shame anybody. We want to offer warm hospitality to everybody. Who knows, I might be a difficult guest for people to have, but people keep showing me warmth and kindness, and we are transformed through this. And I think as well, when I said I love patterns and I love allegories, I also love the idea that you practice a small thing in your life and you persist and you show discipline in the things that you do. It's going to cover you with grace and with persistence and perseverance for the long haul. So I think the more that we discipline ourselves to kindness, to tame our tongue, to not jump to conclusions, the more we can show those things in social settings. Do you know what I mean? We're always being grown up in learning how to show hospitality, in how to be gracious. So yes, of course, there are going to be difficult people along the way. And yeah, we just keep honing our skills and keep being kind and keep...
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I guess another thing that I've learned with showing hospitality to difficult people, which hopefully can just kind of add to what you've just said, is that, yes, I totally agree on setting boundaries. And one of the boundaries that I've set is that there are a few people that I don't have come over unless Tasman is home.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that these people are dangerous, but some of these people cause me anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I would actually, I would imagine I would go with that as well. And actually, when you asked me the question at first, that's the first thing I thought of. The more the merrier. We build each other up with supporting each other in teams, in groups, don't we? So yeah, doing the harder things together is definitely encouraging and strengthens us.
Yeah, just adding to what you said then, I just came up with another idea of something that I've done a couple of times is with some of the difficult people is, I make sure that my husband's home, but also invite other people to join in on our gathering as well so that it is diluted and that there are other people that are bringing their joy and their stories and their friendship as well. And it just makes the evening go so much smoother and, makes it a lot easier to see and to show hospitality to the difficult ones. So I guess that adds to what you've said.
A question that we gave you either, but it's just something that I personally have struggled with in the past. What do you think we should do when people then take advantage of our hospitality? I've had that happen to me a couple of times in friendships where, I've enjoyed that person's company and I've shown a lot of hospitality, but then week after week they will ask for a little bit more and they'll ask me to babysit their children and to pick up these groceries on the way and do this and do that, and then it ends up every couple of days I'm doing something for them or hosting. That's happened to me a couple of times before.
Right.
And I really want to show Jesus love, and at the same time I find it exhausting.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm being taken advantage of.
Yeah. I think in those situations we do well to call to mind our sort of order of vocations. And so, we need to honor God. The three of us, but not everyone listening, but some of us might be married. And then the three of us all have children. We have obligations to our children. And then outside of that circle comes other people. So when you look at these hierarchy of obligations on our lives as Christians and as people, then you think, okay, well, where does this person fall? Okay, really not in the top tiers of my obligations. And so we would do well, I guess, to say to somebody, oh, well, once I've met my obligations, I generally have about one day free available. So Tuesday is my good day. If it falls within that good day, or, this is what I have to offer. Sometimes it's good to get in first to to let someone know what you have on offer, and then they can take you up on that or not. So the beauty of aging is that you just get better, if it matters to you, get better at communicating. And I can't tell you what a delight it is to now be in my 51st year or whatever, and to be growing in ability of communicating these things to people. Yeah, and just learning how to say, oh, actually, no, I don't have time available. I have one day this week. So, yeah, something like that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for coming on today and for being so willing to answer the questions that we didn't give you beforehand. It's been a really beautiful conversation, and I've learnt a lot and I've been encouraged, and we truly think that our listeners will be encouraged as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And what a delight and what a gift. And the thing is, it is not a burden. We don't need to do it with grumbling. Love gives, and it's rewarding, and you receive from it, and it builds up everybody, and things change and we transform. God is good.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to keep the conversation going or are seeking further encouragement, please visit our website and our new blog at hereshestands.online. Here She Stands is an Australian podcast for Lutheran women, and we release new episodes every 3 weeks on a Tuesday. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms as well as YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you would like to contact us directly, our email address is hereshestands.podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, we pray that you will hold fast to God's word and confidently stand and say, "Here I stand, I can do no other."